Want to see the three greatest questions ever asked? Well, you're going to have to look elsewhere because today's video isn't going to get you anywhere close. That doesn't stop the religious from really liking their own ideas, getting high on their own supply, but that doesn't make any of it defensibly true. But who cares about that, right? Certainly not the ridiculously faithful. Ever notice how the religious seem convinced that their ideas are the best ideas ever? Well, here we go again. This time out, Dr. Daniel King, I'm not sure what he's a doctor in, but I'm sure it's absolutely nothing useful, is going to give us the three greatest questions of all time. Except they're not. He's also going to try to give us the answer to all of them, except he's going to fail. Because this is just another religious scam trying to sell the gullible books and courses of no demonstrable value because, fifis. It's always fifis. So let's go watch this entire thing implode.
Have you ever asked yourself, what is the meaning of life? Or what should I accomplish with my life? Or perhaps you've asked, what should I study in school? Or who should I marry? Or perhaps you've gone through personal trauma or a heart-rending experience like the death of a loved one or dear friend, and you've cried out, why did this tragedy happen? All of these are important questions, but there are three questions that are even more important for you to ask.
The problem, though, is that none of those questions were actually important. Now, they might have been emotionally significant to the individual, but all of them were bad questions to ask, as I think Dr. King intends. Because those are certainly questions that you can ask yourself and make decisions for in your own life. They're just not questions to which anybody else can give you answers. Now, I suppose somebody could give you some suggestions. You can see a guidance counselor to see what they think you ought to study based on your aptitudes and your interests. But they certainly can't tell you what you ought to do. They can't come up with a single true answer. No, the religious, they're convinced that some magical man in the sky holds all the cards, and therefore he gets to tell you what you have to do, because God has a plan. Yeah, but it's not God that's actually doing it, if you notice. It's the religious telling you what they interpret God's plan to be. And that's just stupid. So with that in mind, let's see what these three questions really are, because I don't think we're going to be impressed.
Proof. God is real. Question number one, is there a God?
Not so far as we can tell. Wow, that was pretty easy. There is absolutely no independently verifiable objective evidence for the existence of any God ever. Thanks for playing, I guess. But that's not what he's talking about, as we unfortunately know. Because theists aren't really asking if we can demonstrate that there's a God. They're only concerned with their own feelings. Does the idea of a God give them an emotional high? And realistically, that's completely irrelevant. Your emotional state doesn't change the way reality objectively works. You don't matter. But for the religious, they are convinced that their own internal brain chemical state is absolutely essential, because everything is all about them. They want to be constantly comforted, and therefore, whether the ideas that comfort them are true or not, that's what they're going to go with, and that's just stupid. It really is. I really want to believe doesn't actually mean anything. The only thing that matters are the facts. What you want doesn't matter. People who can't get that through their heads, they really need to grow the hell up.
Question number two, if there is a God, does he care about me?
Whoa, hold up there, bucko. You haven't answered the first question yet. This is another case of the religious replacing every if with because. They're not actually asking if there is a God, because they don't care about that. That's already a foregone conclusion in the religious mind, because it satisfies their emotional desires. So what they're really asking is, because there is a God, does that God care about you? Well, even ignoring the whole because thing, because they haven't demonstrated it at all, how would you go about finding out if any potential God actually cares about you or not, or even knows that you exist? Because unless you can actually show that said God is objectively real, how could you come up with a test to see if they even know that you're alive? It says so in a book? Well, how did they know that? How can you test that assertion to see if it holds water? This is exactly where they have all of the problems. They don't know, they just believe. Well, how do you verify any of it? They don't. Of course they don't. It's why they care so much about faith and then make excuses for why faith gets them absolutely nowhere. Because anyone can have faith in anything, no matter how absurd it is. It never, ever makes anything true.
And question number 3, if there is a God who cares about me, what is my response to him?
So that's just bum rushing past 2 questions because they really don't care if any of it is true. They've already adopted blind faith because it satisfies their fifis. But that's still stupid, isn't it? I don't care how much you really want it to be true. You haven't demonstrated that any of it is. And this is really why apologetics is such a ridiculous joke. It exists to lie to people, to present indefensible claims to those who already believe so that they're willing to keep filling the collection plates. It's performance art for dumb people. Now, I'm sure King here has a lot more to say on the subject. I mean, he's only 55 seconds into a 2-minute and 47 long video, so we'll see if he manages to save himself from looking like the moron that he seems to be. Let's be patient. He might have something intelligent to say by the very end. I just wouldn't be holding my breath.
We could phrase these 3 questions by saying, is God there? Does God care? And do I dare to follow him?
And my objections remain the same, no matter how you rephrase the questions. Of course, this is just a con man using standard scam artist tactics to make his message memorable and accessible to the dumb people in the audience. He is talking down to his meal ticket. Well, you're not smart enough to remember this on your own, so let's make it easier for you. It's just coddling the fifis of the religiously gullible, and that's not something that anyone ought to be proud of. So he's just wasted a couple more seconds without validating any of the things that he said. Do we think he'll manage it in the end? Place your bets now in the comments below.
And what's really interesting is that all 3 questions are answered in one verse in the Bible.
So what you're really saying is you don't have an actual answer. Gotcha. Because you haven't shown that the Bible is worthwhile to begin with. Just because you'll want to believe it, that doesn't mean that you should. Again, we see the real purpose behind videos like this. It isn't to present actual, defensible evidence for the claims being made. It isn't meant to convince the skeptics. It's intended to make the people who already buy into it for emotional reasons feel good and to keep them paying the bills of the apologist. It caters to dumb, gullible people using all of the sources and buzzwords that they already buy into for non-intellectual reasons. Absolutely none of this is at all rationally defensible, but they don't care about that, do they? They just want to get paid and have an audience. And unfortunately for Dr. King, He doesn't really even have one, and I've pointed this out before on a lot of apologetic videos in the past. He has about 2,000 subscribers, and this video, which at the time I'm making this has been out for more than 2 months, has exactly 42 views. It also supposedly has 4 comments, all of which are, for some unknown reason, they're completely invisible to me. I wonder why. Can anybody else see what it says? Please go to the link, take a look, see if you can see those comments. Because I can't. There's just a blank screen. So let me know what you see down below.
Hebrews 11:6 says, "Without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him."
Then he ought to provide evidence that he's real, huh? Keep in mind, this is part of a larger discussion on faith that started in Hebrews 11:1. Faith is believing what you wish was true and not what you can actually prove. Faith is not something that you should be proud of. Faith is not a demonstrable path to truth. So while King has answered the questions for the religiously gullible audience that he has, it does absolutely nothing for anyone who is seeking rational answers. It essentially says, believe because I say so, not because I've given you any good reason. Anyone who can't see the problem with that, they've got some serious cognitive issues. And I love how he has proof stamped up in the corner. But that's not proof. That's a bald assertion. Proof would require evidence, and this guy doesn't have any of that, does he? Why would he? He's talking to people who are predisposed to accept things blindly because it caters to their immature fifis. And that's pretty damn stupid, isn't it?
And so this verse tells us first that God exists. Second, this verse tells us that he rewards those who diligently seek him. And so that tells me that God does care for us as individuals. And third, this verse tells us that we must place our faith in him.
Well, the Harry Potter books at least suggest to us that Harry Potter exists and that he is the chosen one. And if there's to be any hope against he who shall not be named, you just have to believe in Harry Potter. That doesn't make any of it true, though. This is really, really, really dumb. It says so in my book, so it just has to be true. No, you're a moron. You believe things with no rational justification because it strokes your immature ego. I don't care what the Bible says until you can prove to me, objectively, that the contents of the Bible accurately represent factual reality. Go ahead. This ought to be fun. Because that's one more thing that the religious and their shyster apologists simply aren't interested in doing. Because they don't care. Actually giving a damn about the truth gets in the way of their feelings. Therefore, they're just going to parade around like a bunch of self-involved morons. Whose feelings matter?
I propose that these 3 questions are so vital that the way you answer them will shape how you answer all the other important questions you ask in life. Your answers to these 3 questions will determine your worldview and your life philosophy, how you live your life.
Sure, they determine just how much of a dumbass you're going to be. How you answer those questions determines just how much money Dr. King is going to make off of you, which, based on his view count, isn't a whole lot, is it? Of course, if you look at his description, you'll notice where his priorities are. The first 3 lines are trying to sell you his books, trying to sell you a study guide, and trying to enroll you in a class so he can keep fleecing the gullible. And of course, he wants your donations. How the hell else is he going to afford a new BMW?
And they'll help you to decide what you're going to do from day to day. They'll influence how you live your life every single day. And your eternal destiny depends on how you answer these questions.
Says you. Of course, that's really all you can do, isn't it? Make empty, unsupported claims and have your hand out because that's how you make it day to day, conning the rubes and providing nothing of demonstrable substance in return. You don't make anybody think, you just make them believe. Believe and open their wallets so you don't have to get a real job. That has to make you wonder if this jackass knows that he's lying for the Lord just to make a buck off of it, or if he's just as gullible and stupid as the people who subscribe to him. Let me know what you think. Dumb or dishonest? Pick one.
And so, I ask you, is God there? Does God care? And will you dare to follow him?
Yeah, no. From here, he spends the last bit of his video hawking his products, but if this is any indication of the quality of his thinking or writing abilities, then that's a hard pass from me. Of course, he's not talking to rational people. He just wants the ones dumb enough to buy his books and join his classes, and that might explain why those comments just aren't showing up. I'm sure they weren't conducive to conning the rubes and got blocked in some way. Now, I can't know that for sure. YouTube is a crappy platform, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me one bit. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you can see any of those comments because I'm really curious what those people had to say. Anyhow, what do you think about this whole thing? It really seems to me that, at least in this instance, L. Ron Hubbard was right. The fastest way to make a buck is to start a religion, or to tie your star to a popular one that already exists. Start a YouTube channel, write a book, and hawk your wares to the gullible people who desperately want to believe, even if none of it is at all defensibly true. Because people are generally stupid, and the ones who aren't, the ones who are going to call you out on it, those are the people that you try to shut up. Well, too bad. You can't silence the truth, and here's the truth. This whole video was mindlessly dumb. These were absurd questions, and his defense thereof was pathetic at best. If you're at all impressed by any of this, you've got some serious problems. Seek some professional help. Rent a clue. Learn how to think and not just blindly believe, because you're not getting anywhere useful in life with your nose stuffed into the Bible. Maybe you ought to try to get a good dose of reality. It can only help.